I'm Ali Heather, and this is the That Guy podcast series. What I thought I'd do is bring together a bunch of diverse voices to chat about how to not be that guy and also how to be a better man. We know that male behaviour is making women uncomfortable, and we know that it's making women unsafe, but it doesn't need to be this way. So I'm speaking to all sorts of men and women with positive advice on behaviours to avoid and behaviours to follow. Join us for this series across all major platforms. James, you're so welcome to the That Guy podcast. We're talking here about how to be a better man and how to avoid being that guy. For them that haven't heard you before, tell us a wee bit about your career and the kind of the area you occupy.
Okay, thanks very much for having me. I'm obviously mildly embarrassed. I'm just sat next to a screen saying that guy. Is he that guy? So obviously I'm a comedian, stand-up comedian, but I've probably occupied a number of spaces. I started off as a DJ in Glasgow City Centre when I was 17 years old. So I spent years DJing in nightclubs, and then across Scotland and the UK would do silent discos and tours around loads of different unis, freshers events, entertainment balls. I worked at Setanta. I was a TV producer. I presented some football. I was in London. I worked in television. I used to present on the shopping channels. So I was, that guy on the shopping channel. And I think over the last sort of 3-4 years, I've been doing stand-up comedy, content creation, sketches, all that sort of stuff. So I've kind of a man of many careers, and probably operating across a few different generations, almost, as it were, as well.
Aye, totally. I was hoping to get a chat with you today about the kind of online sphere, because you're pretty influential on there, particularly on TikTok. Hey, how long's that been going on?
I started TikTok about the year after sort of lockdown. I wish I'd sort of done it beforehand. I was too concerned about what other people thought, actually. But I started TikTok about 3 years ago, not far off 3 years ago. And it was great for me. It's a great platform to almost kind of unlock some of your creativity, come up with daft ideas, and it helps you get a bit of a following. And with the following, you can sell tickets, you can get people come to see your gigs. But I suppose also as well, with a following comes with the awareness that all of a sudden you've got to be pretty careful or mindful about the things that you're doing and that you're saying, because everything is recorded out there. Everything's there for the rest of the time, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So, it's a great tool. It's a great platform. There's a lot of good to it, but I think there's a lot of darkness to social media as well.
100%. So some of the spaces you've occupied in terms of DJing, stand-up comedy, football punditry, like there are a few that guys in these spaces quite famously. But just to start us off, I'd love to hear about a man that you looked up to when you were young. We're talking about like good men. Who was somebody that you thought, like, that's a guy that's doing it, that's a guy that's a positive?
I think, I'm 41. When I was growing up, the main sort of, I suppose, cultural reference points are sort of heroes that you had were probably football players. That was your first thing. You wanted to be a footballer, so you were looking at, Celtic players, Manchester United players, guys you would see on the telly, Ali McCoist, even if you were a Celtic fan, just banging in goals for Scotland. So football players, for me, films, you'd be Tom Cruise. But, when I was growing up, there's 4 channels. I remember when Channel 5 came out. So, like, cinema had a huge impact on culture. So you were really kind of, again, it was all sort of male, almost like superheroes almost, you know what I mean? Batman and all that. But everyone was a kind of, almost a philandering womanizer. That seemed to be the sort of, I don't know, the archetypal man of that point. I used to love Only Fools and Horses, Del Boy Trotter. I used to watch Saved by the Bell, Zach from Saved by the Bell. And these, these were the guys that you sort of looked up to. There was no kind of sort of boring individual. It was kind of some sort of swashbuckling, philandering hero that had women. It's a long way to say I loved these womanising characters, basically.
But that was it. Like, that was who was put in front of us. Like, what were we meant to think as young guys looking up to these guys? And it's no different, I think, in the online sphere for folk that are coming of age now, like folk that are coming along late teens, early 20s. They're no looking at Tom Cruise, I hope. And Ali McCoist is maybe past his prime for being a huge influence. But they're still looking up to similar things. So let's talk about that. As a DJ, we're talking about spaces where men take advantage of women, where men have a sense of entitlement over women's space, over women's time. Let's start there with time. Like, when you were younger on the DJ circuit, how would you approach women? How would you, like you and your mates, how would you kind of...
Well, I was always DJing, so what I would do was I would get the lighting jockey to shine a spotlight onto a girl that I fancied on the dance floor, and I would just get him to like put a strobe light literally on her and get her attention that way. I mean, God forbid she was epileptic. But I mean, or we used to project. You could text the DJ box, and you could type a wee message and project onto this big screen, big wall in the shack. So I would always be like, "Excuse me, you in the yellow dress, the DJ fancies you." Do you know what I mean? Which is, when I think back now, I think that's horrendous. But that's like, I don't know, like how you would talk to women. It was very, very different. Like, and I remember guys in the football team, like they would just feel a girl's bum in front, they would touch it, tap a girl on the bum, and that was just kind of deemed acceptable. And then like even when I'm saying this out now, I think, I can't believe that was what used to sort of go on. It was just somebody walked past and grabbed someone's bum, right, or tapped them on the bum, or put their hand around their waist to talk to them. Nobody would kind of think, oh, you're invading that woman's space. That was just like, oh no, you're in a nightclub, that's what goes on. Whereas like, my girlfriend recently told me, she went, oh, if somebody grabbed me in a nightclub, she went, I'd phone the police. And I was like, why, I don't know, you could phone the police. And she went, well, what if somebody grabbed my bum in the middle of the street? And I went, oh, you'd want to phone the police for that. So what's the difference? So I just think, you're going back into the early 2000s, and it's not saying anything that was acceptable, but ultimately, I don't think there was an appreciation. Certainly when I was 18, 19, I never had appreciation for probably anyone's personal space in that regard, because you'd be squeezing past people in nightclubs. You'd think I'd have somebody pinching my bum, and you think, oh, listen, it goes on. So I wouldn't be aware of what that was like for a woman.
And that's it. It's what's it like for a woman? Because as a guy, you're in that kind of space. There is a safety to it. Like, I've obviously, like, we've all had like sort of hen nights come up to us and like squeeze our bums, like sort of feel our biceps, all that kind of thing.
Nobody's ever squeezed my bicep. I don't have one.
But that kind of idea, But it's no the same when it's like a hen night where you're drinking them, having a laugh, because there's no sense of threat to personal safety.
Like, I'm 41, if you go back to the early 2000s, that was the era of the FHM, lads, High Street Honeys, Soccer AM was a huge influence on TV. You had the Soccer AM, Soccerette, where you would bring a female football supporter on. She'd be sort of dressed in a football strip, but scantily clad, as it were. And, she would do a catwalk up and down with Tim Lovejoy, and they'd be, have you got a boyfriend? Oh, I'll never last. This was the kind of, that was the sort of era. And I think that, most men probably took their cultural reference point from, it's all right, it's just a bit of a laugh type thing,
So there is a line though, because like there is a line between like enjoying yourself and being fun and being flirty, and actually being aggressive and being entitled, feeling like you're entitled to a woman's space and a woman's time. Like the Soccerettes blows my mind that was a thing. Like, it seems so a million years ago now. But I suppose the women involved were at least like, they kent what they were like, it was consenting, it was all that kind of stuff. But grabbing somebody's arse on the way past, isn't it consenting? And that's the line.
Absolutely not. And I think it's even just, like if you were talking to someone at the bar, if you're moving through a crowd, you might grab someone's waist to move them to the side or touch their hip or something like that. And I think that's how you operated. There was no malice, there was no ill content or sort of some malcontent towards that. You would just be, but when you think now, that's invading someone's sort of personal sort of space now. So if I was like, I'm too old to be in a nightclub now, but if I'm walking through a nightclub now, you're almost walking by with your hands up. Whereas I think, back in the day, there was just zero awareness or appreciation for that sort of space, potentially for a lot of guys. You'd be walking through.
Like, just as an example, to show that this isn't an out of date issue, right? I can't name the names for legal reasons and stuff, but there's a band touring Scotland now that are very popular with 16, 17, 18-year-old lassies, right? Very popular with them. So at the gigs now, if you're a man that shows up on your own of a certain age, you get taken aside and asked a series of questions like, well, what's your favourite song of the band? What's the best album? What are you doing here, basically? Because they're having such a trouble with single men showing up just to like feel up younger lasses in this crowd. And they have like a little sort of creeps pen at the side of the stage where just single men that can't answer the questions have to go and hang out. So like, as much as it was a cultural thing 20 years ago, the behaviour is still absolutely embedded. So as much as me and you have changed our ways of behaving in public, the core entitlement to women's bodies still exists in the male psyche. And like men still feel like they can do that, and they're having to have special security at gigs to make sure that like children, like 16, 17-year-old lasses, are protected from men that think they have a right to go and feel up their bodies in public. Something you said that I thought is worth getting into as well is like the fact that that happened as when you're out with the lads. Now, out with the lads, I think has been partly replaced. Young folk didn't go to the pub in the same way that we used to because the cost of pints is so outrageous. But the WhatsApp group chat is the new hanging about in the pub, getting the chat kind of thing. Talk to us about, like you've talked before about the power of influence your pals, like the power of peer pressure in the WhatsApp chat. How do you decide where, like, because you didn't want to come in like being like a pure cherry on the woke cake, policing folks' language, but in a group chat, when you see somebody acting out of line, how do you like to, like, how would you intervene in that?
I think you've got to be honest about that. Most people just, you actually just go, I'm just going to mute this group chat and I'm not going to really participate in it. You know, like I've been in dozens and dozens of football group chats from various football teams, and you'll get people that'll post, and there's always somebody that's posting, you know, the sex noise, or there'll be some sort of photo, or there's always somebody that's posting loads of porn and stuff like that on it, you know, and you're just like, you know, you set your camera roll to not save anything that goes on, because you fucking start looking, you know, oh no, that's from the football group chat, you know. But it's really difficult, because if you just turn around and go like that, well, that's not for me, maybe I'm fucking virtue signaling or whatever. So most guys, ultimately, you might not agree with it, you're just like, well, do you know what, I'm actually just going to non-participate in this, or I'm not going to like it, or I'm not going to react to it or comment on it. I think, you know, it's very, very easy. People go, it's not for me, but they don't want to be ostracised, they don't want to have that lack of that sense of community that you get from being part of the group chat. You go, fucking him, you know. So I think a lot of men find it really difficult to call out outdated behaviour, especially in amongst a group setting. I think they still really struggle with that.
Both of us, hey, loads of group chats that we're in, the five-a-side group chats, there are professional group chats, there's festival group chats and all that. And all the time you get stuff in there that you think, that doesn't align with my values at all. But you didn't intervene on every single occasion. But there's times to step in. How do you step in? Because it's not easy. I
think it's difficult. You've got to maybe apply, you say, that context. Is it, do I know the people in this group chat? Is there 100 people in the group chat, but only 10 people are kind of consistently, you know, putting stuff in it? Everyone else is kind of long gone or not interested. I had somebody message me something this morning and I didn't agree with it, and I had to kind of almost make a little joke. I just went, I'm actually too woke for that now. Because you do get a bit of resentment. I think whenever you try and change, there's always a bit of resentment to the change from people. So, you know, if I think about the language maybe that I've used in the past about women, I'll say, oh, birds and this and that. Whereas actually now I'm like, well, you can't say that and you shouldn't say that. But if you highlight that to someone who you've always used that language with, they're like, oh, is that you? Do you think you're better than us now? And you're like, well, I'm just telling you that's not for me. So I think in certain group chat, you can leave the group chat. That's probably the best way to deal with things, is actually leave it. I think if the group chat's one thing, if you could actually probably have a positive influence in person and actually say, listen, do you know what? Because my older brother's profoundly disabled, he's got quadriplegic cerebral palsy. I often talk about ableist language, but I've also used ableist language, so I can't, you know, preach to anyone. I just say, listen, I'm a wee bit uncomfortable with that language. Or you might want to wait and get a hold of someone in person if you can, you know, and just say, listen, by the way, just a wee thing, I'm a wee bit uncomfortable with that language that you're using. And I know I've said stuff like that in the past and I kind of cringe about it, but I'm just letting you know it's not for me. it's never easy, but I think the more you do it, it's about setting good boundaries for yourself. And I think the more you're able to do that, I think the easier it becomes and the happier you're going to be, because you're not kind of going, oh, I just want to kind of ignore that. Because that is the thing. We all just kind of turn a blind eye to it at times. So,
Aye. And it's not easy, and nobody gets it right all the time, I'm sure. I'd certainly didn't. But it's that thing of like, where do you actually have influence? And you have influence over your close friends and over your family. And it's a relatively small group of people, but those are the folk I'd want to positively influence me,
Yeah.
and I'd want to have the same positive influence over them.
I think it's the same just with your own, I suppose, digital footprint. Like I don't do like content about my annoying girlfriend, or the mix. I think that's been done, and there'll be somebody better and more able and more cleverer than me that can do that. There's so many more things to sort of talk about, worry about, parody. So I think I try and use that as an influence. Like I don't like post anything about that sort of stuff. I try not to use that language when I'm doing comedy. I don't do routines about my girlfriend or women drivers, or these sort of things are very easy targets. I think, well, there's plenty of straight white males that could take a bit of a doing, including myself. So why don't I start? I always try and start there, and then I'll figure out the rest of it thereafter.
If you had the chance to step in and stop a woman being sexually assaulted, would you?
100%, right?
Thing is, many of us have had that chance and did nothing.
Because every time a guy trolls a woman for her looks,
Or grinds against a girl on the dance floor.
Or leaks nude of their girlfriend?
And we let it slide because it's just banter. That encourages some men to take it further.
Putting women at risk of sexual violence.
So next time you see a mate saying, she'd get it, or not taking no for an answer,
have a quiet word and help keep them away from trouble.
Don't be that guy that just stays silent.
Speak up and help stop sexual violence before it starts.
So me and you're about the same age, and we both kind of grew into the internet. How has that changed, do you think? I think a lot of the content and a lot of the chat has got a bit more radical and a bit more extreme.
Again, I don't think guys equate what they're doing to harassment. So I think, in a modern world, to go and chat up a woman in a nightclub, you would go up and talk to them. I would go up and I'd kind of slag somebody off basically, but I think those shoes match your dress, and you try and get a bit of crack, and you'd have a bit of carry on and a bit of banter. And so that was kind of how you that's how we used to try and chat someone up in Glasgow, just a very Glasgow approach, just slagging each other, that's how you would sort of interact. Whereas I think, obviously, as you get into the digital era, it's sliding into the DMs, and that's how a lot of people meet, whether it's liking photos or they send messages. But then you always, for every story that you hear, you don't hear the other side of it. So you'll hear somebody, I met my boyfriend, he slid into the DMs a few times, I ignored him, wasn't interested, and actually pestered me to go for a date, went on a date, we're married, we've got 3 kids. So that story exists, that happens, but you only see that. You don't see the hundreds or the thousands of just this guy just in my inbox is just having a conversation with himself.
So this is a phenomenon of the digital age.
I think one of the things is everyone will say, "Oh, I've heard about this," but no one's going to admit to being the guy that's doing it.
Oh God!
Because everyone must be someone, because that's the thing. Like everyone's like, "Oh, these guys, that's mental." You think, okay, well, so there's not one guy out there that's done it, but who are all these guys that are in the inboxes where they can go, you've replied a few of my, and you look back and you go, fucking, all right, that's fucking 11, and no replies.
Well, let's talk because like you say, the art of sliding into somebody's DMs, no easy. And it is that thing of there's the kind of I use Instagram more than TikTok, and when I used to be single, it was a thing of somebody follows you, likes a few of your pictures, you like a few of their pictures, maybe comment on their story. Then
there's that's the thing. Although there might be an etiquette, there's no rule book.
Nah.
So you don't know what's right, what's wrong. So you think that's like my photo. I've sent a message that I've been out with that last girl, and then before you know it, you've done it to someone else, and they're like, who's this guy?
But there's a clear, like, you build it up,
Yeah.
and it's got to bounce backwards and forwards, and that's key. It's got to go backwards and forwards, and then you send a DM, and maybe they reply. But the second you find yourself sending 2 or 3 unanswered messages, and they've been seen and all that, you got to step back. That's where it is. Like, because flirting is back and forth, and flirting in all kind of walks of life. Like you're saying, like chatting up a lassie in a nightclub, a wee bit of back and forth, and then she's like, anyway, I'm going to go and chat to my friends. You're like, okay, cool, fine. Like, it's fine to hear a wee flirt, and nothing needs to come off the back of that.
Or you can start, and somebody goes, actually, it's Patter's murder, and because that's happened as well. You start chatting someone up, and you go, can I get you a drink? That's happened to me before. Where, remember the time I put the drinks order in to turn around, she was just like, right, thanks very much, I'm away. And you're like, right, okay.
And that's fine,
Yeah.
because you hate different out spots. You hate spaces you can leave that conversation. And for that woman, there's spaces where she can leave. And if she has had to put up with your patter for 5 minutes, the least she deserves is a drink, and then being left alone for her to go away and enjoy it with her pals. Like, that's fine. And the same etiquette, I think, the same kind of breadcrumb trail works on social media. Like, you crack, like, maybe flirting back and forth with somebody, and they just choose to go away. That's fine. The second you send more than 1 or 2 messages, you've become that guy. You've become the guy that actually she will not leave alone. Like, women have autonomy. If they fancy you and you're making yourself open,
Well, I think
they'll come to you.
But everyone, I mean, I remember my ex-girlfriend moved back to New Zealand. I didn't have her phone number or anything like that, and I think I would get really drunk, want someone, and I would email her. So the only thing that I would have was an email address, and then I remember, I think over the space of 6 months, I'd sent her 8 emails, and they were just like, you know, hi, how are you getting on? You know, you're having this conversation with yourself, and what happens is you convince yourself that, no, well, she doesn't reply because she doesn't want to get her feelings tangled up, and you know, and none of your mates are giving you the real advice. Mate, see if she's not replying, she's not interested in you, right? And that's the thing. You can convince yourself of anything, and you need somebody to go at, mate. If anyone wants to reply to you, they will. The moment, as you say, you start going, she doesn't really read her messages that much, she doesn't check them, but maybe she's not seen that one before, and it's like, mate, you would reply to anyone if you really wanted to. So when you're not replying, you're not interested, but it's when you sit and you fester and you overanalyze it, or you've got people who want the best outcome for you, so people give you bad advice and they're like, no, I should maybe just send another wee message, maybe she's not read that one. You know, you'll get girls who'll give you that advice as well, because they think, oh no, you're a nice guy, and maybe you should just try and, you know, tell her how you feel, and then you think, right, okay, and another one. And you only ever see, I think it's very easy to sit and virtue signal, because you only ever see, I suppose, your behaviour through the lens of someone else's. You know, my partner, I remember when we first got together, somebody that she'd had a relationship with previously, or not even a relationship, used to message her, but he was drunk, and then obviously she hadn't replied, and she went, what do you want me to do to these messages? I mean, it's up to you, do whatever you want. I think she just decided, do you know what, I'm not going to, it's too awkward to confront him, to say, listen, I think she changed her profile picture to include the both of us, so it was kind of clear. Because I was like, listen, we've got a house and a dog together, man. Like, that's, you know, he's still following. Yeah, but also, like, my partner, she doesn't really like posting stuff on social media. So, again, I totally understand how someone might interpret it. And we go, well, because, again, if they're sitting at an afters or sitting at 5 a.m. and looking through, and somebody's going, well, she's not getting any pictures of anyone else, she must still be single. So, but if you're following the digital etiquette, you might think, well, yeah, there's no breadcrumb trail there of a partner, because we've got this social construct of what we think should happen. That's a very male dominated. Well, you know, if she's got a husband, there should be a picture of him in the photograph, or they should have a picture outside holding the dog outside the house. So it's very easy. So I can totally understand where that comes from. And then before you know it, you know that she's 3 or 4 unanswered messages over the space of 6 months. You know, and it's just, and again, very, very innocent. Just, hey, how are you getting on? Not heard from you in a while. Or another one, oh, listen, I'm going to be in such and such a place. Just, do you know anywhere that's good to go? Just excuses to get the conversation going. And I think what happened was she got a message, it's just during lockdown, she went, listen, he's actually messaging me again, but he said, listen, you've not replied, I get it, you know, and it's this thing that most men have probably said, oh, you'll never hear from me again. Don't worry, good luck with the rest of your life, you'll never hear from me again. And I bet you in about 3 months you'll hear from him. And I remember it was about 6 weeks later, and she went, guess who's just messaged me?
No way!
But listen, I think it's important because you're like howling there. Most men have done that.
Of course we have. Of course we have.
So that's the thing. When that happened to him, I went, fuck, that was me. Like, that was me with my ex, someone whom I've had a relationship with, I've had a deep connection with, I've spent, you know, a couple of years of my life with. You're sending an email, right? And you're thinking, oh, it's quite a passive form of communication. It's not vibrating the phone in the middle of the night. But still an unsolicited message.
Well, it's that thing of like, if James, we're setting the rules of the day, right? If we're setting the rules of the day, when do you go, right, okay, is it the second unreplied message?
Well, I don't know. I've been in a relationship for nearly 5 years, so I couldn't tell you. I think that's the difficulty because you get taught you can maybe interpret the various messages that get sent out in society, right? And it's all like, if you think about this hustle culture that we're in, and persistence, not resistance, and try again. If you look at films and TV shows where you talk about the great romances and all this stuff, all these things are, you got to persist, and you know, it's not the unlikely romance always comes from the. So you think, well, that's what is out there. You should just keep trying. So maybe, you know, you'll wear someone down, and maybe you'll get. But again, and then what you do is you take maybe the sentiment from the success stories from your friends, from your female friend who goes, oh, you know what, I never thought I'd end up with him, but actually it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I didn't want to get out with him at first. You think, all right, okay, so you start bending the rule, to suit. And then I think you've got the younger generation now that have got this horrific influence out there by all these, like you're talking earlier, social media guys, the Andrew Tates, then you've got the pretenders, the ones that are all doing the Misfits boxing, HS, is it TikTok, all these guys that are projecting this online image of wealth and material gain, and they seem to use, you know, women's the social currency. So you think, all right, well, you keep trying, and then you're in the group chat, nobody's saying to you, mate, maybe just let that go. The guys don't tell each other the truth, so they're all saying, my ex, I don't message her, just cut it off. Don't. And then it turns out you read about them in the paper, they've sent 7,000 messages and been turning up at their work. So nobody ever admits to knowing these guys or being that guy, but they seem to exist.
Well, so certainly I've been in that position a number of times when kind of like I've really fancied somebody or relationships ended. And I have thought, that in the culture, persistence. So many movies, like you're talking about. It's about keep tapping on the door.
The message can be really polite, really well-meaning, could be really succinct, just, hey, how are you? But it's that, I think I watched somebody do a TikTok recently, and it was hilarious, but it was just like, if that guy was, if the guy in your DM's having the conversation was, hey, how are you? Hey, hiya, what you up to? You still up? You know, just... So each one of those messages they're not particularly damaging, but it's 15 messages.
And it's weird, it's weird.
And it's that, I think that's what you're talking about. The entitlement comes from, or like I read a lot about, they always make the newspaper, these stories, guys asking for money back on the date the next day that's not going that well, you know, like, because they're just lashing out, they're hurting, like, oh, can you send me that money back? Since it's not going to go anywhere, can you send me that money back? You see all the accounts, so I just... The best account I sort of followed was called the Dating Orange. She's a huge account, TikTok account. It's an Irish girl. She hides her face with an orange filter. The fruit, not just an orange filter. And her account has almost just evolved because she had been on, say, 50 odd dates, 50 first dates, and it's just horrendous. And then people started sharing their dating stories, and it was mostly women sharing their dating stories. And that for me was like the real eye-opener, because I think men, I've been guilty of this, we go, oh, women are mental. Some women are crazy. And you think, do you know why? If they are crazy, do you know why they're crazy? Because of us. They are mental because all these guys out there, and we are one of them, are absolutely insane, you know, with the love bombing. And then she would read the stories of people's dates, and they'd be like, on a date, and guys would be like, oh, do you think, you know, my mum would love to meet you, and oh, do you think we'd have 2 or 3 kids, we'll have a house together, oh, everything's going so well, I've never had a date like this in my life, and then run out halfway through the date, and then she's found 6 months later on social media that the guy's been married the whole time. Like, that happens. So that was for me the moment, like when I saw that account, and I was just like, fucking hell, aye, we are mental. You know, that's the thing. So,
And we're here talking about online, right?
Yeah.
We're here talking about the digital space, and that's something that's been so useful, I think, is letting us see what women are receiving. Like all these posts of DMs, all these posts say guys doing exactly what we're talking about, all these anecdotes on podcasts and things.
Yeah.
It lets us see. It's like, hold on.
well, that was when I moved to London first time round. I was 27, so it was I don't know, it's 2009 or something like that. And I did online dating, so there was no apps at the time.
Aye.
It was I think you had to. There was a website called mysinglefriend.com. It was Sarah Benee's website. That was the best of the one. I think they had Plenty of Fish, which was just horrific. There was like eHarmony, Match.com, and I was on them all. But the My Single Friend, it was quite a London thing, so you had to get a friend of yours to write your dating profile. And I got my best friend at the time, a girl I dated at uni, but we became really good friends. But when I would go on these dates, the most interesting part for me, I was just like, right, tell me what other guys are like saying, because it was fascinating, because like people were like, oh, I really liked your message, it was kind of really original. I'm like, what do you mean it's really original? And she's like, oh, just, you know, you're quite funny and original. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. She was like, well, most guys just copy and paste the same message. And I was like, you're joking? She was like, no. She went, I've had the same guy message me the same message, not because obviously he's just copy and pasted it on 100 people. It's just so funny, because then, you know, I remember, I can't remember how you would, if you matched with someone, you could then have the ability to send them a message. That was how it worked, and vice versa. But what used to happen was, you would only ever be interested in the women who hadn't responded to any messages that you'd sent. So I would have messages from women, but I'm not interested. I want to message this girl who's not messaged me. And I remember thinking to myself one day, I was like, I'm awesome. But think about all the messages that you've been sent by matches that you've not replied to. And now that's happening to you. So I thought the only way to karmically balance this up was I then replied to every single message in my dating inbox, like months and months on, hoping that this would somehow karmically allow these women that I was interested in to sort of message me, or vice versa. And like, some of the responses I got were really interesting, because there were some people who were just like, who do you think you are? Right? Like, because I was like, hi, thanks for the message, don't really think we're that suited, but all the best.
And there's like, what are you talking about?
And some people were just like, who do you think you are? Some people were just like, oh, listen, fair play, thanks for the message. And other people just quite rightly just sort of blanked it. But that's, again, that comes back to entitlement. There's me thinking, oh, these other women should message me back, or I should respond to my message because I've responded to everyone else's. You know what I mean? And sometimes you've actually, as you say, you've just got to go, aye, you might have matched with somebody that there's no entitlement there for somebody to reply to you, like your message, find you funny. So in a very measured way, that's fine. But I think it's how easy that can then descend into poor behaviour, you know.
And yeah, so like, and so there is that direct link between thinking that a woman owes you a response, or a woman owes you the money back for a date that didn't go well, or if you bought them a drink that they owe you a certain amount of chat after, or whatever, that then becomes a more dangerous. It's like all part of that idea that you have the right to a woman's time and a right to a woman's attention, that leads to harassment, that leads to violence, that leads to the much more serious end. They kind of
I think that's right, and I think probably for me, I'm always keen to not virtue signal and go, but it's also a very difficult space to navigate. So most men just go, no, I've never done anything like that at all. I've never sent a DM, and I've never pestered someone. And you look back and you go, have I done that? Have I sent 8 emails in 6 months to an ex-girlfriend who had to speak to him? I think she sent an email. I think, go tell James to stop messaging me.
Oh no! In the end,
aye. And that's what happens, you know. And you've got to just go, you got to take that one on the chin,
Aye.
and then you can go, that's out of order. And again, but I think that's where if you could nip a lot of that behaviour in the bud, if somebody was able to put their arm and you go, listen, mate, I've seen it happen in comedy. Comedy's a space where there are a lot of creeps operating, but yet nobody knows who they are. And then something comes out and they go, yeah, it's well known. Women have their own group chats, and apparently there are people that they are warned to keep away from working with or being on their own with, because there are so many male comedians who are operating in very predatory ways, and women are hugely outnumbered on the bill. Often there's only maybe one female on a bill, on an all-male bill. One female, which obviously puts them at a huge disadvantage. It makes it awkward for them if they're the only woman in the green room. So you've got to navigate all these areas.
So just spell out for us, what would predatory behaviour in comedy look like? What kind of spaces they're taking advantage of?
Well, I think, again, I enjoy male privilege, so I can't truly understand what that is, but from talking to female comics, it's about, for example, a male promoter, who can then be very handsy, for example, or so these are all the things that normal people don't really see. So
Right.
I don't really know how it works, but it's about exploiting or abusing a power dynamic. So if you're responsible for giving someone lots of work, if you're far more senior to someone, all of a sudden it's little behaviours or acts that you think, is that normal? Like, could be putting a hand on the small of someone's back, and then before you know it, the hand's flat and it's widened across the back, and this guy, somebody make me think, I'm sharing a bit of intimacy with someone, and it's not until someone is able to speak out against it, but that could be months later, and it more often than not, it's not going to be to another male. So it's, we need to do a lot more, but it's really difficult for women to have the space to say, by the way, the promoter or that experienced comedian is looking at me a certain way, and because a lot of people go, that's just the way that he is.
Aye.
And then when you're near to the scene as well, you're not going to, who are you going to tell? And that's how I think it's still operating. And I'm about to say, it's really difficult for men to help, because the reason it's difficult for men to help is because we've not created a welcoming environment where people actually feel comfortable to say, actually, by the way, do you know what? I think that guy's a major creep and makes me feel uncomfortable.
That's it. Like, my creepdar is really poor, and it is my female friends that are able to say, that guy, and that's the kind of behaviour. Talking about, you were talking about, like, hey in a pal to put an arm around your shoulder and say, maybe then he send that 9th unreplied email. My brother was amazing for that when I was growing up. Like, he was, because I would be totally in the same boat as you. Like, I broke up with somebody, and I'd ring their house on the landline, and it must have been mortifying for them. But I'd be ringing them a few times, be like, let's talk about this. Like, come on.
I have drunk text, you'd be sending it when you're drunk, because that's when your inhibitions are lowered. That's when you're at your most vulnerable, and you're just like, please take me back, or whatever it is.
And seeing things,
And you need somebody to go, mate, she's probably read that next to her boyfriend, her new boyfriend that she's got. Let it go. And but no, she just wouldn't do that. And it's the lack of reality check, I think, that you need, and it's somebody to put your arm in and go, you're being a bit creepy here.
My brother did exactly that. He was so good at just being like, no, Ali, that'll do. Like, you had a crack at it, and it's finished for a reason, and like, no one likes that. Did he do that? Like you said, you didn't like being like when lassies would send you a bunch of messages, and I know that I wouldn't find that an attractive trait. Like, just getting like a series of messages through for somebody who replying to. So why would it be attractive when the shoe's on the other foot? And so I was lucky enough. Like, there's things, certainly exactly as you're talking about, being overly persistent, taking, like believing that I had the right to a woman's attention and time. And there's nothing wrong with sending a message as long as it's polite and all that kind of stuff. And I was lucky enough to hear an older brother that would say, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, so obviously you've got a really successful TikTok, and something you've done some really funny videos about is that kind of online toxic masculinity, they call it, like online male influencers, like shredded boys, cigars, cash, cars. First of all, why is that so funny? And second of all, is there a real danger to what's happening there?
I think it's really funny because, like, I've worked in sales a long time.
Aye.
And I always think, what's the end game here? You know, because when you scratch beneath the surface, nobody's as successful as they ever seem, right? And I think if you go right back to, you know, you see all these memes, the meme culture, and it's like Jeff Bezos started in his garage at 40, you still have time. And you're like, yeah, Jeff Bezos worked in Wall Street and took a $400,000 loan from his parents. You know, he quit his job because he saw the internet coming and he was a highly educated, wealthy individual. So I always think you scratch beneath the surface, you'll find nobody's as good as you think. Everyone's always operating either on a bit of luck or a bit of good fortune. So I think when it comes to certain online influencers, like there's a guy, one of the guys from, I think it was in Made in Essex, I was going to say, yeah, Only Ways Essex.
Aye.
And his is a big thing. It was always like, jump on this call with me, and you know, and they're wanting you to do forex trading. And he's like, look at me, we're always aboard. Look at the lifestyle, and you get a call with me, coaching call, and I see kids like signing up to all these things for crypto and this and that, and so they can see that, yeah, I'm on crypto, and it's a pyramid scheme. And like, I've got a mate that works as a foreign exchange trader. They went, yeah, they'll just be getting a commission off an introductory fee. Like, none of these guys are making money. You know, they're just basically getting, you know, names and addresses and signing these kids up to get 100 quid each off them.
Aye, they're just farming their followers.
They're farming their followers, that's it. It's like, you know, like I worked on the shopping channels, we sold a load of rubbish on the shopping channels. Some stuff was good, but a lot of it was rubbish, right?
You'll be back on the shopping channel.
But at least people knew it was kind of rubbish. But what you see is with anyone, as soon as they seem to have a big platform, they bring out a fragrance. Somebody was doing like these things, I think it was essentially shake and vac, you know, but they were literally, she was, oh, buy this, and it was £1. It was just selling something for the sake of selling something. So when I think you look at these online, the male influencers that are shredded and driving about in cars, there's a lot of videos debunking them. They're going, yeah, what they do is they'll hire a big house for 3 days, take all their clothes, hire out 4 cars, and make it look like they live there. And they're selling these online courses, how to make money, how to do this. And like, I've read a lot of books, or, you know, when I'm saying a lot, I've read maybe 10 or 12 sales books, you know, Grant Cardone, and then I think there's a lot of great stuff you can take from a lot of things, or if I'll take that wee nugget of information here, I'll take that wee nugget of information there. But most people won't do the detail these days. So I think when the young team, as I call them, see somebody online with wealth and in a jet or on cars, they go, he must be rich, that must be true. And actually, it's all to get your money. Because if they're really just interested in your mental well-being and your self-esteem as a person, right, they're looking to gain something, looking to monetize that following with an online course, how to speak to women, how to attract women. Look at the women that I've got, so it looks for me, you can get this. And like, they've almost all of them have been found to be the emperor's new clothes.
But James, this wouldn't be working, and they couldn't get away with the grift if there wasn't a sense of need on behalf of young men to get some sort of guidance.
Definitely, and also as well, what they're saying, you know, you're talking about these, you know, the Andrew Tates and the many guys that are popping up in their place. There's a lot of sensibility in what they're saying. Now, I don't agree with any of them, but you can't look at them and go, well, nobody would get a rapid following or a huge following like that if they weren't saying a lot of things that made sense. You know, so things like, you know, be fit, be healthy, be strong, be disciplined. Treat women with respect, look after them, right? It's then all the other stuff. These are low-value women. You want to go with high-value women. And there's a brilliant parody that a comedian that I know, a guy called Ali Woods and a guy called Josh Berry, they did a brilliant skit about being radicalised by Tate, and they're just like, oh no, she's a low-value woman. And it's just like, when you see it through the lens of parody, you think, it's really pathetic, but it's worrying because obviously you're getting a whole generation of young men who are thinking, this is the way that you should be. I'm going to get really fit and powerful and masculine. And this thing about being masculine, you can, like, you know, it really worries me, like this toxic masculinity where it's just like, You know, it's like I see guys running clubs at the moment now is a big thing, and then I can kind of see a low key toxic masculinity come through there because guys are just running about with their tops off all the time now, and you think, why do you need to run with your top off, mate? In London, I see guys running around parks now with their tops off, and you're just like, why do you have your top off, mate?
Relax.
Relax. Why do you have your top? And you always see it, you know, you don't go at a festival, the guys that are ripped will get their top off, and you think, okay, it's a festival, I've seen that more and more, and it's like, why? What is this peacocking thing that's going on? Do you know what I mean? So I think it's a really worrying and a really damaging arena at the moment where, and these things have always existed because when I was, you know, working in television, I remember that book came out. Is it the Neil Strauss book, The Game? It was kind of celebrated.
Just summarise that for folk that haven't read it, because that was like a big cultural moment.
Yeah, it was a book. I'm sure it was when about 2006, 2006. I always kind of navigate by football seasons. I was working for Satan at the time, so I always remember. I was in the 06, 07 season. Yeah, that book came out, and it was. I think like that was again at the zenith of popularity in like FHM, Nuts, Zoo magazine, and it was like the pickup artist, they called it, the pickup artist guide to women, and it'd be like negging women out and how to get, you know, high five them, how to gain traction and increase interaction, and oh my god,
how to increase the number of women you're sleeping with.
Oh yeah,
regardless of how it makes you feel, and regardless of how it makes them feel.
And just that sort of thing, almost like applying just a high pressure sales approach to it. So just like, well, if you ask 100 women out, one of them's going to say yes. So I think that's when you see that, it's just the same thing that these modern male influencers
it's not
doing.
new, it's a new platform.
Yeah, and they're just trying to activate it through a toxic masculinity and grab you in, you know, like, you know, you want to be a man.
But then, like, Andrew Tate would turn around, or any of these kind of influencers would turn around to us and say, look at these two woke guys. Like, what? Of course they're saying all this stuff. Of course they're saying all this stuff. But they are not going to lead you on some sort of path to happiness. How do you feel about the label woke?
Again, it's like I'm a bit of a grammar pedant, and I pride myself on being quite good at English, although my girlfriend always beats me at Scrabble on the iPad. I must add, if it was on the board game, I would win. But she's figured out how to do all the high scoring words and stuff like that. Woke, being woke, I think the term comes from an awareness and awakening of systemic racial inequality, and ultimately the term woke means that you're actually just being educated and empathetic and aware of the basically systemic inequalities in the world. So being woke is just like being a good person. That's what being woke means, but it's been actually radicalised by right-wing press and people to kind of mean this thing of, this woke nonsense. And you're just like, what, thinking about other people's feelings, right? Okay. You know, like this kind of people getting annoyed about pronouns or how somebody wants to identify. You know, if somebody, you know, are you going to identify as a chair? If somebody wants to be identified as a chair, no problem at all. It's not really a big deal to call someone James or an armchair, is it? It's not, how does that affect you? But I think that's that toxic masculinity where we're now in this environment where people are trying to make out that that's a real danger. And
I think that the idea of these male online influencers is saying we can help you become fit, rich, and envied, right? And I think that, like,
they're all capitalists.
Yeah, but I think the alternative offer is, I think leading a sort of more woke lifestyle where you're empathetic towards people and you care about people, I think leaves you more emotionally enriched. It leaves you in more pals. It leads to a better life. That's why I say this stuff.
There's not many influencers out there saying, why don't you just live a happy life?
That's it. They all seem miserable.
And I can only come from the perspective of my own personal experience. Like, I worked in sales for a long number of years, and I worked commission only, and I earned a lot of money at one point. And when I say a lot, when I was earning £85,000 a year as a self-employed commission only double glazing salesman, but I had a breakdown. I was miserable. I was unhappy, not because of the company, because I just worked 80 odd hours a week. I was very unhappy. I was buying clothes that probably I looked stupid in, but I had the daft trainers with the spikes on them and all that sort of stuff. I was desperately trying to be someone else, someone I wasn't. I used to drive like a Passat estate. You know, it was a double glazing car with double glazing logo and blazing down the side. I was in this car 6 days a week, and I remember a girl once saying to me, "Was that your car?" I went out and bought myself a Porsche. I had no time to drive it. I used to drive it 10 minutes a night. I used to get home, if I was finished early, which was 10:30 at night, I would get into my Porsche, I would drive around Summerston and back and put it back in the garage, and that was it. I was so unhappy. I was drowning in debt, even though I was earning loads of money, because I was desperately trying to make myself happy by being something I wasn't, and trying to attract this ideal of someone who didn't exist, you know. And it was, you know, I was kind of trying to show off that I had money, talking about the money that I earned. I would go on holidays. I would really, and when I look back now, I just think it's just a desperately unhappy guy. And you know, I've been to university twice. I've got 2 degrees. I see myself as an educated individual, but you still want human connection. And you still want to fit in. So you will do anything to try and get that. When I was a single man in my 30s, I was just desperately trying to fit in. So I can see where people who feel a bit lost, where they find community and solace in someone that's saying, "Come here, we'll give you somewhere to go." But it takes a lot to turn around and go, actually, you know what? Maybe just have a happy life, and just, you know. So when I think about my ambitions now compared to then, my ambitions now are just like, I just kind of want to spend time with my partner, walk my dog, do comedy. I don't need to sell out the Hydro. I'd like to sell out the Hydro, but now I'm just kind of like, if I get to do comedy a few times a month, do a couple of big gigs, I'm quite happy with that. But I'm far more secure in myself. But it's taken me to 41 to get there. So I think if I was speaking to my younger self or these younger guys, I'd be like, best thing is actually just trying to live a happy, more mindful life. And that doesn't, I might sound a bit wishy-washy, it might sound woke, but you kind of want to say this stuff is going to leave you really unhappy.
And it's also hard. Like, you still have to work hard to build a life that you're happy with. James, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a great chat. Absolutely great chat. Thank you.